TVJ News has received reports that emergency services are at the scene of a serious motor vehicle crash on Waltham Park Road in Kingston. There are reports of casualties. It's understood that shortly after 11 o'clock, a car ran off the road and crashed into several persons. We'll have more on this developing story in subsequent newscasts. British Prime Minister Theresa May is likely to meet with Caribbean leaders tomorrow to discuss their concerns on the issue of the deportation of the Windrush generation. These are Caribbean nationals who went to the United Kingdom as children over 50 years ago. The Guardian newspaper said Downing Street's change of heart followed the publication of a letter signed by more than 140 members of Parliament from across the political spectrum. The letter, which was sent to Mrs. May, expressed concern about the many long-term British residents who have been incorrectly identified as illegal immigrants. The request for a meeting came from representatives of 12 Caribbean countries and is to be attended by Prime Minister Andrew Holness. It was earlier reported that Mrs. May had refused the formal diplomatic request. However, in a statement this morning, Downing Street said the Prime Minister only became aware of the request today. The statement continued saying Mrs. May deeply values the contribution made by the affected residents and all Commonwealth citizens who have made a life in the UK. It said the Prime Minister is making sure the Home Office is offering the correct solution for individual situations. The statement adds that she is aware that many people are unlikely to have documents that are over 40 years old and assured that no one with the right to be in the UK will be made to leave. Meanwhile, Home Secretary Amber Rudd has apologized for the treatment of the Windrush generation, saying it was wrong and appalling that some face deportation. Many long-term immigrants who arrived from the Commonwealth as children have been told they are in the UK illegally. However, the Home Secretary has announced a new task force to help those affected and promised to waive fees for new documents needed to prove their status and stay in the UK. The education curriculum for history needs an urgent overhaul. That's according to the National Council on Reparation, which has been researching and pushing Jamaica's call for reparation from Europe for the losses and hardships caused by slavery. At the latest RJR News Forum, council members indicated that most Jamaicans are not fully aware of the impact of slavery, as the history that continues to be taught is from the slave owner's perspective.
It's our responsibility to educate. The Center for Reparation Research has an education mandate to let people know exactly what's going on with regard to reparation.
And that's why the National Council on Reparation will be ramping up its education drive in coming weeks. Co-chair of the council, Professor Vereen Shepherd, says for the almost 10 years of research and advocacy, there has even been resistance from Jamaicans who seem to side with colonizers. Council member Stephen Golding links this to a flawed education curriculum.
That's certainly where the National Council on Reparation has chosen to put a lot of focus in the past year and in this coming year. We have an upcoming youth conference on reparations. It's going to take place on May 25th, which is, African Liberation Day for those who know.
The council believes the only way to address the issue is to change what is being taught at all levels.
The Ministry of Education has a new grade 7 to 9 history syllabus. And the C6 history syllabus is to be reviewed shortly. And the CAPE, the more advanced one, has been reviewed. I was privileged to have been asked to be on that review panel, and we actually have a module on reparatory justice.
The program at teachers' colleges are also to be revised. In the meantime, the council says it will continue its independent campaign.
For a long time, our education was being controlled by the very people who had enslaved and then colonized us. And so the narrative was their narrative. And that is what we are encountering with young people. So when Prof says we're using historical dates and events, it is also because we're trying to re-educate the population.
Public sector nurses are not backing down from their quest to get a new wage and fringe benefits agreement by the end of this month. The Nurses Association of Jamaica, NAJ, says it's expecting a date soon for negotiations to continue. Its president, Carmen Johnson, says the recent appointment of a new finance minister should not delay the talks.
hope is that we will have a date early, giving the new minister time to acquaint himself with the whole negotiation process and where we were and where the negotiation ought to be going. And so we wrote reminding them that we're expecting an early date. So I'm just giving them time to settle in, and I'm sure he will call us to the table.
In February, the association objected to the 4-year wage agreement offered by the government. It said its members are not likely to benefit from a long-term contract. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, is raising new concerns over the government's pace in coming to a wage agreement with public sector workers. Here's Dashan Hendricks with a primetime news preview.
Well, we have just completed a meeting with the International Monetary Fund, which it says the country has essentially remained on track in achieving the targets under the IMF program, but it rapped the government on the slow pace of the wage negotiations and wage reforms in general. Concerns also about the slow pace of growth in Jamaica and the sanctions on Russia and its likely impact on the Jamaican bauxite and alumina sector. We'll have more for you in primetime news at 7.
There are concerns this afternoon regarding the management of markets island-wide, especially that of the Yallas market in St. Thomas. The market has been an issue for the local government ministry for years after it was leased by the former local government administration. The details from TVJ's O'Shane Masters.
Local government minister Desmond McKenzie is up in arms over the conditions vendors at the Yallas market in St. Thomas have been enduring for years. He contends that they have been at a disadvantage as they have had to sell their wares outside the market. But what seems to be the source of contention with the market?
The Yallas market was leased to an elected representative of the then St. Thomas Parish Council. They leased the market to this elected representative to operate a junkyard, to sell motor vehicle parts, to store motor vehicle parts.
But the selling of the items by vendors outside the market is another issue. This as they are forced to be hiding from the police or have their goods confiscated. That's why Minister McKenzie says his ministry will be seeking to have the matter of the Yallas market addressed once and for all, even though it has been in the courts for years and a ruling previously handed down.
And we're going to make every attempt again to get back the market so that the vendors can go in the market and ply their trades. It is a disgrace. And what makes it bad, it is an elected representative.
Minister McKenzie was speaking at a recent St. James Municipal Corporation meeting.
Almost 6-minute video with the policeman hurling expletives and making derogatory comments about a justice of the peace as well as Police Commissioner Major General Anthony Anderson. It's still not clear what caused the incident, but it was enough to spark outrage from the lay magistrates fraternity and a suspension from the police commissioner.
The suspension takes effect over the weekend, and he will remain on suspension pending the outcome of an investigation which is currently being conducted by the Inspectorate of Constabulary.
Head of the Constabulary Communications Unit, Assistant Superintendent Delia Garrick, described the comments by the policeman as discourteous, adding that a major probe is underway.
The probe will determine whether criminal and administrative charges should be brought against the policeman. The force has rules and regulation and guidelines, and his display has breached those rules and policy, as well as he was captured using expletives in the public, which also constitute a breach of our laws.
If one uses profane, indecent or obscene language publicly, they can be fined up to $1,500 or be imprisoned with or without hard labor for a period not exceeding 30 days. One man has been shot and injured after a brazen daylight gun battle between members of a gang in Harborview, St. Andrew and the Kingston Eastern Police Division. Reports are that around 8:45 this morning, the police were on a special operation in Harborview when they came under heavy gunfire. It was returned and in the end, one man was injured and 2 firearms found. The identity of the man is still unknown. Sub-Officer of Operations in the Kingston Eastern Division, Mark Harris, has a warning for gang members.
I just want to warn the citizens of Harborview that since the start of this operation and the initiative in this area, the police are occupying this space effectively. Our aim is to get the guns and to protect the citizens. And anyone who try to disrupt this will be, with any criminal behavior or action, will be dealt with accordingly. Please take the
$1 million from the credit card account of Police Commissioner Major General Anthony Anderson. The suspects, a man and a woman, were picked up on Friday. This brings to 3 the number of persons arrested in the case. The Police High Command launched a probe in February after members of a criminal network cloned the credit card of Major Anderson. Investigators say $1.3 million was removed from the credit card. 44-year-old businessman Earl Hobbins is to return to court on May 1 to answer to fraud charges. The cops are searching for other suspects in connection with the matter. Residents in St. James are calling for the government to implement policies to ensure the proper maintenance of hospitals to prevent problems such as those plaguing the Cornwall Regional Hospital. TVJ's Anthony Lugg reports.
The whole Cornwall Regional Hospital thing still is a heartbreaking story, you know.
That's pretty much the view of most persons we spoke with, as they depend on the services of the only Type A facility out west. With a crisis facing the health ministry, there are mixed views as to what should be done to the hospital's main building where noxious fumes are making patients and staff sick.
Just demolish the building and done. No repair and have no use. That's so.
A structure like this cannot be lit down.
This hospital is too important. I'm not saying that it no need to repair or to build, but how much a new one cost now?
Even though a number of patients were relocated over the past few weeks, some argue the crisis was preventable.
Over the years, you don't have no plan, you don't have nobody to maintain the whole infrastructure. So really and truly now, when Mr. Tufton now I come now and I say, boy, this need to be done and this need to be done. Really and truly, he might try to do what he can do, but really and truly, I don't really feel fault alone.
If you have a shoes on, you have a shoes, you're wearing it every day, right? And every day you realize it have a hole in the bottom. You don't buy a new one and you don't try to patch the shoes in the bottom. What you expect? One day going to leave you on the road.
So they're calling for policies to be implemented.
And then you have a strict code when it comes on to who maintain hospitals. Because Cornwall Regional is the first one now, so you have more to come to. So what about the one at town? What about Kingston Hospital? Others. They need to have administration who monitor maintenance for these places.
Anthony Lugg, Superintendent Steve McGregor, who heads the Community Safety and Security Branch of the JCF. Speaking in Brixton, Clarendon recently, SSP McGregor says while the police continue to record gains in the fight against crime, more can be accomplished with the help of citizens.
In a country where we're murdering over 1,000 people every year for the last 13 years, if you are a citizen of this country and don't have a police officer as a friend, you're not so smart, you know. You're not so smart. Because when you have something to speak about that is confidential, you're not going to call 119. You're not going to call the police station because you don't know who will answer. But if you have a friend who is a police officer or who works at the Brixton Hill police station, guess what? You go and call him.
Director of the National Integrity Action, NIA, Professor Trevor Monroe, says when compared to previous years, data shows the police are getting more information through various tip lines like Crime Stop. He says the findings are encouraging and gave this advice to citizens.
Not to keep quiet, but to talk out. Not to put yourself in danger, but to speak tactfully but firmly to the officers when you see wrong. People coming from other communities who you don't know, What I'm doing here.
Professor Monroe adds that while citizens should play their part, proper policies must also be implemented, and so this message to the National Security Minister.
It's a time of opportunity for a new national Minister of National Security to ensure that in implementing Jamaica's national security policy, that there is no protection for wrongdoers, whether those wrongdoers are in communities like Flanker or in places like Gordon House. There must be no protection for the wrongdoers wherever they are.
Anthony Lugg, TVJ News.
The mayor of Spanish Town is this evening criticizing the police for not using evidence captured on a closed-circuit television CCTV system to catch criminals in his area. Norman Scott pointed to an offense in a car park which was caught on camera.
The perpetrators were caught on camera, and to date, the security forces have not used the evidence that was present and that was available to them. I don't know why, but it was not used. If we don't intend to use these evidence, then why invest in them?
Mayor Scott was speaking at a recent meeting in St. Catherine with the police and various stakeholders. He urged the security forces to ramp up surveillance of the Linstead Transportation Centre, which has become a breeding ground for criminals. Deputy Commissioner of Police Clifford Blake responded.
Transportation centres is currently our focus and will be more of our focus. And I can assure Mr. Marshall and yourself that we are